Okay, FSX users, we are headed towards Logan International in Boston, and we're going to do the ILS landing. Let me show you how it's done, and we're going to attempt to line up perfectly with the runway, but we're going to have the ILS do it. And thank you for watching the episodes on FSX, highways, and cities. So we need to go back to the main cockpit here, and click on the GPS. You can see that we're right along our path, our flight path. If you ever want to follow your flight path using the flight planner, all you need to do is make sure you have GPS selected and the localizer, and you'll see the plane will actually turn. Now the plane starts turning right onto the path towards your runway. Now I don't want to do that right now because I know that the runway is actually, there's the runway right there in green. So we're gonna turn off the ILS, the nav hold, and we have the heading hold. Let's put that on, and let's turn it on to 135. Now the heading of 135 is because I'm gonna go 90 degrees to the runway, and then the ILS vectors will intercept my plane and turn my plane directly to it. So we have heading hold on. We're going to turn our speed down to about 190, and let's get this GPS back on, because we want to make sure that we're going to be intercepting with this runway right here, which is actually the ILS. So this is a heading of 45. I want to go 90 degrees to that, and I want to go 135. Alright, so that's what I've done here in my heading, to make sure the heading hold is on. Now, do a couple of things here in this aircraft. First thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on the ILS button, which is going to activate our ILS vectors. Let's go ahead and do that. Now, we're going to switch on nav and approach hold. What these three switches have done is that it's going to automatically turn the aircraft right towards the runway and line us up perfectly. And to make sure to do that your autopilot's on as well. So let's just wait. So this aircraft here in our GPS is going to be intercepted with this ILS. As soon as our aircraft comes about here, the plane is going to turn right towards the runway. And let's see if we can do that, and it will center us perfectly and put us on the glide slope. You see here, this pink diamond tells us that we are too low. We need to go higher. But I'm going to keep this altitude that we have right now, 3,000, because we'll be picked up as soon as we intercept the ILS vectors. And here we are, we just did it. So now the plane is turning. You see the attitude indicator is turning towards the plane, and at this moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slow the plane down to 180 knots on the airspeed. I'm also going to lower the flaps, which I'm just doing on my keyboard. I'm going to lower 30%. And I am also going to lower the landing gear at this point, so we create some drag and we slow the plane down. Now when we get closer to the runway, we will drop the flaps all the way down on full. But as of right now, we are going to be lined up perfectly with the runway. And this is exactly what's happening. The autopilot's doing that with the ILS. So to make sure, let's drop our speed down another 5 knots. You want it to be slow. And usually about 165, 175 is the going rate, I'll say, for the IAS, indicated airspeed. Now, what's going to happen is we're a little low on the glide slope. So as soon as the pink comes down even with us, it's going to drop our plane and start our descent right towards the runway, which is 4 right. So you see it getting lower, and now we're perfectly lined up. And you can see that we're perfectly lined up here because the pink is in the middle. Also, the plane is going right towards the end of the runway. And if we take out the actual the cockpit, you'll see here that we're also lining up at the runway. So let's do that. So now what's going to happen is, as soon as this pink is even, now we're going right towards the runway. So what I'm going to do at this moment is I'm going to take off the cockpit for a few seconds, and you can see that we're perfectly lined up at the runway. I'm not doing that, folks. That's the ILS. Now, you can't see it on the Airbus 319, but on your keyboard, if you want to lower the flaps, you're going to press F7, and when you go all the way down, you're going to press F8. And the gear, the landing gear, which is already down, you're just going to press G. So let's go ahead and see if we can finish this up. So I don't need this GPS anymore. I'm perfectly lined up. Let's turn that, take that off. Let's bring our speed down to another 100 and 170. And then when we get towards, close to the runway, about 100 feet, we're going to turn off, our autopilot and our auto throttle. Now we're in perfect alignment. What I'm going to do is I'm dropping down the flaps a little more. Let's see where we are. We're still perfectly lined up at the runway. Now, if you're wondering about the flaring, you don't flare yet. I make this mistake a lot. Now, right now, we are perfectly on the glide slope. You will flare after you turn off the autopilot and the auto throttle, and you will drop your throttle all the way down to 0, and then you pull the throttle, pull the stick back or the yoke, and you'll be able to flare. So right now we're perfectly lined up. You can see that. Let's see how we're doing. I do have collision turned on, so if I mess this up, I will crash. Now also look out to the left, and you'll see the white and the red lights. When you see don't sink, ignore that. The lights have to be, there were 4 lights. They have to be 2 white and 2 red. If they're all white, you're too high. All red, you're too low. If they're 2 and 2, you're perfectly on the glide slope, and this pink should be in the center. Just ignore the don't sink. That's quite annoying. Alright, here we go. Now, I'm doing at this moment is I'm turning off the autopilot. Actually, I'm turning off the auto throttle. So let's do that. Not yet. Alright, turn off the auto throttle. Now we're controlling the indicator airspeed. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to control, turn off the autopilot about now. Alright, now we're landing the plane manually.
Don't sink. Don't sink.
Now the plane is about to stall, and we're going to flare. Perfect. Right center in the runway. Press F2. ATC should come on. F2 is your reverse thrusters. Hit the brakes a couple of times. And we just had a perfect landing. We flared on autopilot, on ILS. The problem with this plane is that it taxis way too fast. But we've had a pretty good landing. Any landing you can walk away from is a good landing, but this was right centered. Let's go ahead, let's turn. I might overshoot this a little bit, but just kind of watch the yellow. And ATC should have told me to hit the ground, but I always overshoot this when I land at this runway, but that, I think, was still a great landing. Follow my lead on this video, and I think you'll be in good shape on how to do a perfect landing centered on the runway, flaring, and without crashing the aircraft. Thank you. Bravo 5. 1, 2, 3, 6. Doesn't give me progressive. Just got to find yourself. Bravo. Yeah. A minute.
Don't sink. Don't sink.